Welcome to episode 63 of the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I'm a board-certified sports dietitian and runner based in Santa Cruz, California. I provide virtual nutrition services to teenage and adult athletes of all abilities, and I host this podcast as a side project to demonstrate that there is no one-size-fits-all nutrition approach towards optimal health and sports performance. I have another athlete nutrition profile on tap for you guys today, with professional distance runner Stephanie Bruce. I've been a big fan of Steph's for many, many years. I deeply admire how candid and open she is about her own professional and personal experiences, whether it's about race performances, her postpartum body, losing her mother to cancer, daily life with her husband and two young boys who she only had 15 months apart, navigating life with celiac disease and other food allergies, or her relatively new congenital heart condition, among so many other things, of course. She puts it all out there, and in doing so, she inspires so many other women on their own journeys. She charts her own path. Last year, Steph proclaimed it was her last year in the sport before retiring, and then changed her mind at the end of it all. She truly does follow her heart, which is an appropriate name for her new book, written by her coach, Ben Rosario. For anyone not familiar with Steph, although I don't know who isn't, she lives with her family in Flagstaff, Arizona, and runs for the Hoka NAZ Elite team. She has been running professionally for over 12 years and has placed 10th at New York City Marathon, 10th at the London Marathon, 6th at Chicago, and 12th at Boston. And she's not shy about telling you that she wants to win. She won her first national title at the 2018 Peachtree Road Race and her third title at age 38 in 2022. And she is not done yet. She's pregnant now with her third child, but she's ready to get back at it afterwards, safely of course, and on her own terms. Steph is amazing, and I really hope you enjoy our discussion. So without further ado, here's my interview with professional distance runner Stephanie Bruce. Hey, Steph, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Let's see, just came back from a little track session here at NAU in Flagstaff, Arizona, and was going to sneak in a little nap, but I got to jump on this podcast with you, so I think that was a good substitute.
Yes, well, I appreciate you being here with me. So I obviously have to kick things off with a big congrats, as you recently announced that you're welcoming another baby to Team Bruce this September. So that's super exciting. How has the pregnancy been going so far?
Thank you. Yes, people like to say that every pregnancy is different, and I definitely feel that with this one. My last two pregnancies, they were a while ago. My youngest son is 7 and my oldest is 8. So it's been a long time since I've been pregnant, and I feel like I remember symptoms pretty well, but this one is it seems like it's kicking my butt a little more, and I don't know if that's a combo of I have 2 kids already and life is just busier. Yeah, I would say I'm in the pretty good phase right now, past the first trimester. I'm about 17 weeks, and some days are really great and I have a ton of energy and I can go do a workout relative to what I do in normal training. And then other days I'm like, you know what, the couch looks really inviting today, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. And I'm just going to kind of listen to my body.
Yeah, I mean, and I can only imagine too, because your sons are only 15 months apart. I remember what it was like for me, having my girls are about 2.5 years apart. I remember being really pregnant and having a toddler. So I can't even imagine what that must have been like having, being pregnant with your second. So at least they're a little older. Maybe they're a little helpful. I don't know.
For sure. Yeah. I have a lot of friends actually who have, they have 15 or 16, 17-month-old babies, and they're kind of talking to me and I'm like, it's hard, right? And I'm like, no, imagine you also have a newborn at home. And they're like, no, thank you. I'm like, yeah, Ben and I look back and I'm like, Ben, we were superheroes and we didn't even realize it, the things that we were able to do. And I think one of our greatest, I don't know, personal accomplishments, we were both still running professionally at that time. And let's see, when Hudson, my youngest, was 8 months old, and that would have put Riley around 23 months old around. We both competed at the Olympic track trials in Eugene, Oregon, in the 10,000 meters. So when I look back, I'm like, Ben, we were both on that starting line. Granted, neither of our races went that well for us, but the fact that we made it there with 2 littles under 2 was quite an accomplishment. So yeah, we're really grateful for sort of the family blessings we've had and being able to balance it with each other. And yes, now that the boys are older, it is getting a bit easier, and hopefully they become more of a help than a hindrance with this new baby coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just find all of that so incredible that you're able to do all that while while having the two littles. And we're definitely going to talk more about pregnancy and obviously how it relates to nutrition and everything. So I'll circle back to that. But I did see that I know you were in Boston. You had a pretty last minute whirlwind trip out there last week, and you took your bump for its first race. So I'm curious how that all went, and how that felt for you.
Yeah, so originally, the whole focus of this spring was Ben was racing Boston Marathon, and then my teammate Alphine. And really, this pregnancy has been, I think the focus is like, I'm going to train as much as I can and as much as I feel like. And mainly the reason for training is to make the comeback easier, not necessarily, I'm not looking for any like fitness gains or anything
Hmm.
during the pregnancy. So I think that's like an important message. It's more like, how easy can I come back and like get back to high level competition once the baby is born? But yeah, for Boston, I was originally going to go out there and do some events for Hoka, which is kind of, I think, the best part of my job. Like when I'm not running a race and I just get to do an event and speak and meet people and sign autographs and books, what have you. And then hopefully be a good support for Ben, because for so many years the tables have been turned and he's been my support. He's our official pacer of Hoka and AZ Elite. Yeah, and he basically manages everything while I'm training full time. So I was hoping to show him a little more love this weekend, and then I figured they have the big 5K on Saturday, a few days before the marathon. So I was like, that's perfect. It's at sea level. I don't have to do anything at altitude, which is where I live. So it'll be
Hmm.
fun to just like jump in the masses race. And yeah, it was a really good time. I just tried to go in running what felt like a appropriate effort for a 5K, and that ended up being close to like my normal marathon pace effort. So I think that was like good relative to where I'm at. And I don't know, I just had a really good time like with the crowds and the energy. There was a lot of cheering. And yeah, and then turn the focus to Ben and Alphine come Monday, and we had a whole cheering squad, and we had a route that we drove to see them parts of the course and reporting on social media and updating people how they were doing. So it was a busy weekend. I think it's easier doing just the pro running part and not doing the cheering, the supporting. So I give people a lot of credit who are in our corner and helping support us, 'cause our part is easy. Just train hard and race hard.
Yeah, spectating's no joke. And I loved the caption you wrote when you posted the picture of you racing. You said, "And to think they used to believe our uteruses would fall out if we ran." And that made me crack up because I know 7 years ago, I would get a mixture of weird looks and really positive encouragement when running super pregnant around Central Park. And it's just so awesome to see more pregnant women out there doing what they love and doing what feels good in their body. So thanks for sharing all of that. I mean, you always share so much great stuff and inspire us. So I really appreciate that one. Um,
Absolutely.
so, okay, we'll put a pin in pregnancy for a bit. And rewind to your nutrition roots, which is how I always love to start these athlete nutrition profiles. So, you were born in New York. I'd love to hear a little bit about, growing up and what kinds of memories you have surrounding food and meal times as a young kid and teenager.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So born in Manhattan, but didn't spend very much time there. My mom
Okay.
she actually just wanted to give birth to her OBGYN that had my brothers. So she actually flew out to New York just to have me. And then
Oh.
we were living in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. So I grew up there till I was about 6. And then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I would say like that's kind of where my childhood memories are,
Hmm.
from age 6 on to 18 until I left for college. And I guess the best way I can describe like my memories of nutrition and food is I grew up with 3 older brothers, and I don't know if it was a gender thing, or I was just fortunate to have like good role models in that regard, that our family sort of just ate whatever we were cooked for. We didn't talk about nutrition a lot. We just were like, um, we had some like Italian background, so we ate a lot of like pasta, lasagna, like rigatoni, meatloaf, like very hearty meals, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. My mom loved to make, she wasn't very good at making eggs, but she made eggs. We did biscuit pancakes. And yeah, it's funny, like now thinking about teaching my children and how much like I do focus on nutrition, it was just kind of an afterthought. And I would consider myself lucky in that regard that we didn't talk about like our body size, our body shape. My brothers and I were all very active. We participated in sports, and food was just like, that's what you do. You get up, you eat breakfast, you have a snack, you eat lunch, you have a snack, you eat dinner, and then you have dessert. So there were no off limit foods. None of us had allergies that we knew of growing up. And so I think that helped me going into grade school and into high school because I just had a really, I don't know, lackadaisical approach, so to speak.
Mhm.
I would say once I got into high school and like was starting to make my own choices, I definitely was like, I love fast food. Like I love chicken. My mom and I actually bonded over Chick-fil-A. We got that quite a bit. We would pick that up and sneak it into movies, which is pretty funny looking back. Like she had
Yeah.
this little bag and she'd be like, okay, we're gonna bring this in. And I don't know if that was because we thought like popcorn and soda and candy was more expensive, or she was like, oh yeah, Chick-fil-A is better for you, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then honestly, my coach in high school, same thing, like, we just ran, and he was like, "Eat when you're hungry, like, eat to fuel you," and we didn't really talk about, like, what body size or body shape we were, so it really gave me a very healthy perspective, and I would say a good relationship with food. I do credit that to my childhood, and I can't point to, like, how it became that way, but as I sit here as a professional athlete, almost turning 40, I really have never had any negative relationship or issues with food, and so I find that, I don't know if yeah, lucky is the right word, or it just the people that were around me sort of shaped my attitude, and I think the only change with as I got older, I started to understand, hey, there is a need to eat better and more purposeful. And that became more apparent as I started to train more and realize, okay, you can't just get away with, oh, I can have whatever calories I want, whether that's from fast food or from, like really hearty meals. I actually have to think about, am I getting enough protein? Am I getting enough fruits and vegetables? So that was kind of the big shift I made, I would say as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's such a refreshing thing to hear. So many of my guests, unfortunately, haven't been as lucky, and have had their struggles. So that's, I mean, yes, lucky is a word or fortunate, but also it's really refreshing. It's really nice to hear a story where it doesn't involve, I mean, obviously you've had your fair share of struggles across the board, whether it's nutrition related or not. So I'm not saying you haven't,
Yeah.
but from this specific perspective on this topic, it's nice to hear that. So at what point did you start running competitively? Was it in high school or was it earlier?
I mean, I would say high school, like I
Yeah.
did we did the physical education, like presidential fitness contest in grammar school, and that was just a mile shuttle run. But
Yeah.
that was like the extent of it. And then I think once I got into high school, I remember it was either track tryouts or we were doing maybe like a field day, and the cross country coach like got a hold of what I ran the 40-yard dash in. And I remember him coming up to me and being like, he wouldn't tell me how fast I ran, but he was like, "Do you ever think about coming out for cross country?" And I was like, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, it's, you run various terrains for anywhere from 2 to 3 miles." And I was like, "That sounds pretty boring." But yeah, I guess I could give that a try. And I honestly did not love it very much when I first started. I don't know if that was a combination of growing up in Phoenix. It was very warm, so practice was either late in the afternoon when like the sun was going down, or it was early morning for most of the year. And I think I was just a high school kid who was like, you know what, I would so much rather sleep in or stay up late than get up for practice at 6 a.m. or 5:30. So it took me begrudgingly a long time to actually love what I was doing. But I will tell you, once that kind of switched for me, I would say like I started to believe more in myself and realize that there was a big mental component to the physical, that if you like showed up for yourself mentally, your body would show up for you physically. And then that probably happened around my senior year of high school. And then I would say from then on is when it was a pretty good trajectory upwards of like, okay, I love competitive running. I love to compete, to see how good I can be, to see who I can beat. And yeah, I've been doing that for the last 20 plus years.
And you talked about your diet evolving a bit, or at least how you started to think about it. So, you ran for, UCSB, and what did kind of food and nutrition all look like, performance nutrition and everyday nutrition look like once you were in college and competing at a much higher level?
Yeah, that's good. College was actually the first shift that I would say nutrition took a little more of a understanding for me, because I think so my dad had just passed away my senior year of high school, and then I moved to California, to Santa Barbara, to attend UCSB. And that first year, I feel like I just was like slid into the classic freshman when they say like you gain the freshman 15. I definitely did that. And it was so easy to see how like you're away from your family, you're in this new environment. And so like food was almost more of like a comfort. And so I think it was like, wow, we have like all you can eat dorms. Like that's what our food was. You could go down to the cafeteria anytime. And then it was the most independence we had and autonomy. So I was like, oh, we can also order pizza and like dessert breadsticks at night. So I just remember being like, oh, this is really fun. And I didn't have too many injuries, but I definitely had a few towards my freshman year that when I look back, I'm like, well, that was probably because I gained weight in like a pretty quick um, time frame. I probably gained like 10 to 12 pounds that freshman year. And so that
Hmm.
was like a lot of extra pressure to put on myself. So I think I had a little bit of shin splints and just calf tightness. Um, and then that sort of like weight gain almost made me be like, okay, like, is food becoming something where it's like fueling, or it becomes like an emotional comfort part for me? And so that, I think, my sophomore and junior year is something that I really had to like grapple with. And I remember coming back home and asking my mom, and that was the first time like she just taught me a little more about cooking. And I would say I incorporated more vegetables and like simple meals, and how to get away from like the easy quick fix of pizza or pasta. Like how could I actually have like nutrient dense foods? So my mom helped me with that. And then I naturally, I sort of was ramping up my mileage my next few years of college. And so I lost that weight that I had gained. And I realized, okay, like you're now an adult, like this is your relationship with food, like what you put in your body is your choice. And so you have to sort of have control over that. Um, and it was nice. I think the environment of my team was so much so that, again, we just trained and we raced, and we didn't really talk about like, what are you eating? How much do you weigh? Like, what does that look like? We did talk about our periods, which I really loved. My coach was very big on that. Like, hey, is anyone missing their periods on the team? He always thought about our long-term health, which I think was really important and really opened my eyes. And that kind of set the tone for me to be like, hey, no matter what I'm doing in my training, my period should be sort of like a gold standard for if I'm treating my body and fueling it well enough. And then towards the end of my college career is when I believe I started to have an inkling for food intolerance or
Mm.
allergies. And I didn't know it at the time, but I remember starting to like actually just feel physical symptoms of illness, headaches, kind of no matter like what food I would eat. I was like, oh, I don't feel that great. And so that turned into like a confusion of, am I eating the wrong foods? Is this not what I should eat before a run? So that was a very confusing time for me those next 3 years, as I would struggle to identify like what I was putting in my body and how it was making me feel.
Yeah, I mean, You have such a long history of like GI and other fueling issues, it seems. And of course, you ultimately got diagnosed with celiac disease. So as we're kind of leading into that period of time, I'd love to hear a little history about like more detail on the GI issues, how you finally figured out the root causes and what those other allergies were. And I guess also, why you think it took so long for you to diagnose, because you were running for a long time and you've been talking about a lot of foods that contain gluten, the pizza, the pasta, lasagna, like all these things you were eating that you were enjoying, like, obviously contain gluten, or at least the versions you were having. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about all that.
Sure. So I would say I didn't feel what I would consider bad or enough symptoms that made me be like, huh, is this how you should feel until the end of my college? Like when I think about how I felt in high school, and then even early college, I was like, oh, okay, I think this is like just pretty normal. But then towards the end of college, yeah, I just remember being like, okay, I have like more headaches and I started to have a couple digestion issues. And then I guess brain fog would be the best way I could describe. And then I feel like some of my kind of markers internally, like it's the first time I got my blood tested my senior year, because I remember running like an amazing 10,000. It was my first 10,000 at UCSB. Um, and first one out, I ended up running 33:28, something like that. And that was the school record at the time. So I ran the school record in my first ever 10,000. And my coach was like, wow, like this is your event. And I was like, "Oh, this is so long," but, I think I was naturally suited for the long distance. But then, like, even just a few weeks later, I tried to run a 5K, and I got through halfway, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and I just blew up in that 5K and ended up running, um, basically one of the splits that I ran in the 10K just for a 5K. I was like, "This does not seem right," and so I ended up going to our kind of like rec center, medical center, got blood tested. And at the time, I had no reference, but I got my ferritin back and it was 4.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
rough.
like, yeah. Like, I don't have to say that to many people where they're like, "How are you alive?" That
Yeah.
was let alone running. And I was like,
Mm.
"Wow." And so essentially I started to supplement with iron. And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna feel better." But then I started to just feel like very winded and running was hard. But we had NCAs coming up the next few weeks. And I was like, you know what? I'm sure the iron is working. Like I've been supplementing for a while. So I go out there and I'm in my NCAA race and we do a blood test right before to see what my iron went up to. And my coach and I talk and he's like, I, I don't think I should tell you. And I said, you're right. I don't want to know what it is. I think I should just go out there and race and, believe in myself. So I go out there and it was one of the hardest races ever. I felt like I was grinding the whole time. But it was an amazing result. I ended up kicking for 8th place, which is the last All American spot. So I was my first NCAA All American in the 10,000. And I finished and I came up to him and I was like, Pete, oh my gosh, like we did it. I was like, what was my ferritin? He was like 5.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like, wow. Okay, one, I'm really glad we didn't tell me before. But when I look back now, it's funny because I see all these college women like running crazy times and like I would not be recruited as a pro if I was in college now. But then I also look back and I'm like, maybe I was really good. And I honestly just because my ferritin was 5, that was all that I could run. So it sort of like makes sense to think how far I've come since then because
Mm.
I was like operating at full capacity back then. So that began a journey to figure out why did the iron only go up that? Is something actually just stopping me from absorbing? So I ended up moving up to Oregon to try to pursue a semi-professional running career, but I didn't have any sponsor offers just because at the time, like I was 5th and 8th in the 10K at my 2 years, but that wasn't really garnering much attention. So I
Hmm.
just found a job nannying and cleaning houses. And I was seeing a naturopath up there. And after a multitude of injuries and just feeling like I am not the runner that I think I like am, I was like, am I an imposter? What does this mean? he basically was like, have you heard of food allergies? And honestly, in 2009, like it hadn't been talked about that much. And I feel like there wasn't a lot on the market. So he suggested an elimination diet. And that's where we essentially took out most of the big culprits. And I was on a very like simple diet for a few weeks, and that was very, very difficult. I felt very bad right away, but then it was actually amazing once I got over the hump of like no refined sugars, no gluten, no dairy. I was like, wow, this is kind of scary. I actually feel kind of good. And then we brought each of those back in like one at a time. And sure enough, like within like hours of eating one of those, symptoms came back. And yeah, so we ordered some more tests, and essentially celiac disease slash I just I kind of have like a few things. I have a gene for non-celiac gluten sensitivity, have the gene for celiac, have a casein like milk protein allergy, and
Mm.
then since then I think that I have just had many other things pop up. And that's the whole thing. I wouldn't even say my journey is anywhere near complete because I still think we're working on things and trying to figure out. I know it all comes from my gut, but there's still a lot of work to do. So that's a little bit of the background of how I got
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting. And but you were formally diagnosed with celiac disease, like you had like the blood test and the biopsy and all that kind of stuff?
No, that's what's interesting. I basically
Oh.
they did it through a stool test.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and they could do it that way, which when I have been researching now, what I'm finding from a lot of like gastroenterologists, they're considering not just our blood, but our stool, like the gold standard of what is actually happening in our gut.
Oh yeah, for sure. I meant more just for celiac. Yeah, I mean, like stool tests are extremely helpful and they can offer so much insight. I actually had just recently, I always like to use myself as a guinea pig before I offer things to my own clients. So I just did like this whole GI map stool panel thing. So I'm digging into the results, and it's really interesting stuff just to kind of see gut health and what else is going on there. But
Yeah.
okay, that's really interesting. And yeah, it's so tricky when like you just don't know what's going on and what's causing things. So I'm sorry to hear that you're still struggling with this. And we're gonna dig into that a little bit more. I wanted to first ask a bit more about blood work. So I know iron was an issue, and I, read your book, and the book you authored with your coach Ben Rosario, Follow Your Heart, which was great. I really enjoyed that. And one of the things you guys talked about was removing iron because now you have high iron. Is that right?
It's more that like I absorb it pretty well.
Oh,
And
okay.
so yeah, it's that seems to be not my issue compared to any other like nutrient that is low.
Got it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't that it was necessarily high. But you have had problems with low B12. I saw that you had issues with folate. I think you said you have a deficiency in the, what is it, the MTHR gene. I have that as well.
Yep.
But yeah, maybe you can speak to a little bit more about kind of the different things you've been doing with food or supplementation and kind of making sure your numbers are in an optimal place.
Yeah, so in I would say 2017, well, I guess I kind of skipped. I would say once I figured out gluten was the culprit, we took out
Hmm.
gluten, and honestly, it was kind of funny. I went from like I was very injured, had a sacral stress fracture. Like I don't know if my running career is like going anywhere. To I found out about gluten, I took it out. I took a chance on myself, emailed the coach to move to Flagstaff, Arizona. They gave me a chance, and 9 months later, I ran 2:29 in the marathon. And we're like, okay, maybe like I am actually like where I believe in my head. And so I would say I had like a fairy tale couple years from like 2011 to 2013, where it was some
Hmm.
of the best of my career. And it seemed pretty simple, like take out gluten, take out dairy, and I don't remember exactly what I ate during those years, but I just remember like not having to think too much about it. I was like, just eat to like fuel my training and make sure my weight is staying up. And I'm at altitude now. I think I took iron as a supplement. That was the only thing that we thought was an issue.
Hmm.
Then I take a little break, have my children in 2013, 14, 15, those few years. And then when I came back to competition, I would have glimpses of like doing really well. And then I'd have a few weeks where I was like tanking, and I'm like, what is going on? So then we started to do consistent blood tests, and I started working with a company athlete blood test, and I love
Hmm.
them because one, they have the testing, and then they do have you fill out a survey where you're like, how are you feeling right now? How is sleep? What's your perceived effort on workouts at the moment? And then based on those results, they will interpret like what they think they want you to do. And their
Hmm.
first and foremost is always, okay, how could we get these nutrients from food? They never want to say, take these supplements. But
Yes.
we started to realize with me, because of my food allergies, not having gluten, not having dairy, and then we ended up figuring out I couldn't have eggs, no soy, coconut, and then just a few other things started to like trickle in. We are like, okay, I am kind of missing important components of like it's hard to get calcium because I'm not having, dairy in that regard, unless I'm just pounding broccoli and just all the different veggies. Um, and then we were like, okay, well, if I can't have that, and then I have to go more into like we said, lots of veggies to get that. Then is my stomach actually reacting to too much fiber? So it's
Yeah.
kind of just like constant back and forth of like, should we like just go all food focused? Should we have supplements? So I figured out that B12 and folate and vitamin D were something that I was struggling with. And after a few weeks of training, I would just lose those supplements, whether that was through like, I don't know, bathroom GI stress or things like that in training.
Hmm.
So I was very just up and down for a few years. And then it really showed itself in the marathon because I would have a really great training session or training block. And then the last couple of weeks, I started to kind of tank a little bit. And then my marathon was very far from what we thought I could do. And that happened for a good 4 to 5 years. Um, and we had all my consistent blood stuff, but then something was just not making sense. So right before 2020, I kind of reached out to a few different people, like some nutritionists, some just, I would say, like chefs or people who had holistic approaches to food. And one of the women I started working with was Lottie Bilriki, who
Hmm.
essentially, she was just here to show me like, what are you eating? How could we improve this? How could we help you prepare your food? And how could you just be more like, like we said, nutrient dense and not thinking, oh, if I have too much fiber, like that's gonna like be an issue for me. So I worked with her for a few months before the 2020 Olympic marathon trials, and I would say it worked pretty well 'cause that was one of the best marathons of my career, even though I missed the team by about 19 seconds. But I just felt very fueled and very like we had just shifted from, oh, I can't have these foods 'cause I might react to, let's just like get these wholesome, like really calorically nutrient dense meals. Yeah, and I just felt really good during that cycle. But then I would say over the last couple of years, I have still yo-yoed between finding my potential and then also thinking I still have some gut issues that we need to figure out. And it's probably some sort of, I don't like to just throw terms around because I don't know this, but whether
Mm.
it's a leaky gut or I some sort of like IBS, there's just kind of something going on that makes me think my gut is the epicenter of what my issues are, because I don't believe I'm allergic to all these different foods. I think I'm just reacting because of whatever's going on in there.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I screenshotted with the book, your book, Follow Your Heart, was an excerpt that really stood out to me on your nutrition. And your coach had said her fueling and subsequent GI issues have been the biggest obstacle for her in her marathon career. And then he also said, at the time of writing, you were only planning on taking a couple of gels and water and salt during the New York City Marathon last year. And I was like, circling that, I was like, wait, what? Only a couple of gels. So I guess, I mean, you already answered my first question, which was, are you still having these issues? And it sounds like yes. My second question was, did you really only take a couple gels, or was that a tolerance thing, or what was going on there?
Well, I think so. It's funny to hear like that sounded alarming to you because a couple of gels for kind of someone in my position, like at the Olympic marathon trials, I took 3.5 gels, and that's for me, that's 350 calories. That's
Oh yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
that's quite, it's sort of enough relative to like my weight and what I'm burning. And, we
Hmm.
burn fewer calories like per mile. Obviously, we're out there less time. And so our whole approach has always been, if you're really fueled in your training cycle and before the race, you hope to not get to a point where you actually need to fuel in that race for that.
Sure.
You're essentially only fueling for us for that last 20 to 30 minutes, right? Which is that
Yeah.
last 4 to 6 miles. And so like from an amount standpoint, that the calories has never really been the issue. It's and water was my only thing I took. So for me, it's figuring out some sort of electrolyte balance. That's sort of a little bit of my theory. I think I have notoriously low blood pressure. And I think what is possibly happening is when that gets too low in the race, that's when I start to feel like the energy shift. Because what I've noticed in the races is I don't bonk to the point of like, oh, well, now I can't come back. I just hit sort of like a bonk that's like, well, now I can't run faster than 5:55 miles, which again, like
Mm.
all relative, someone would be like, oh, that's not slow. But I've
Yeah.
been running 5:20 to 5:30 pace.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden for the next, like the last 7 miles, I can't get back down to that, but I'm not blowing up to like 7-minute pace. So it's this strange balance of like, is it simply an electrolyte thing that we're needing in that? And is the carbohydrates that I'm getting from my gels enough? It's amazing. I've actually like tried to reach out to a lot of different people, and I have yet to find someone who's like, let me figure that out for you. So it's been,
Really?
yeah, been a strange. And I'm like, am I doing something wrong? That I'm like, does anyone want to help me? Does anyone?
No one wants to help you?
It's weird. I can't explain it. Like I've reached out to like a few different people, and no one is quite like dialed in and has the like, let's break down like what you're doing and what's happening, and is it something that it's actually what I'm doing in the race fueling, or is it something like leading in the weeks before that your like blood is off and that's affecting it. So
Like
that's
you're reaching out to like sports dietitians, or you mean to like all different kinds of professionals?
lots of different.
Interesting. Hey, everybody. Sorry to interrupt your listening, but I was hoping you can do me a favor. If you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe to my podcast, the E for Endurance podcast. Share it with your friends or anyone who you think might like it. And please rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. That would greatly help me out as I try to grow my show. Thank you, and let's get back to it. Have you
Yeah.
had your sweat sodium concentration tested before? Just out of
Nope.
curiosity?
Nope, I have not.
That
Exactly.
could be
Yeah,
interesting
I know.
to get
I
that
I
tested.
I typically don't. I'm not a big sweater, actually. I know that because historically, here's where it's like tricky. It's definitely something with the marathon distance and either like
Mm,
my storage of glycogen, because I actually do really well in hot races when they're shorter.
mm,
So like if you race me in a 10K half marathon, which is when you're not going into that different energy zone, that's where I've like really thrived throughout my career. So it
mm-hmm.
makes me believe like I have a pretty good balance, and I'm not a excess sweater. Like I ran the NACAC championships in the Dominican Republic. Not the Dominican, it was in the Bahamas, excuse me. And that was 90 degrees with 92% humidity. So
Oof.
basically, yeah, it was terrible. But relative, like I had a good race for me, and yeah, so it's definitely something about the marathon distance and
Mm,
glycogen component, the storage in my liver. That's kind of my theory.
yeah. And to rewind for a second, I interpreted a couple of gels as 2 gels. So 3.5 gels sounds a little bit better,
Okay,
obviously.
sure, sure.
I was like 2 gels, that sounds so low. Um, and it's so interesting. I'm curious though, is like, does that feel when you're taking like say 3.5 gels,
Yeah,
does that feel like enough? Have you ever tried taking more? Is it like a fear of like gut tolerance, or is it just like I don't really need this? What is the kind of rationale behind? I know you
yeah.
said like it's about fueling beforehand and like in the training and everything, but just from a standpoint of using using what you have like right in that moment, I'm just curious the rationale for that.
Yeah, so definitely gut tolerance,
Okay.
because my issues have been, and it's only happened in 1 or 2 races, but in practice, basically, when I would practice with certain gels or thing feeling, I would stop. I would have to stop and go to the bathroom.
Mm,
So basically it would not make it through me, and so that has
yeah.
been a big fear. I mean, even the day before the Olympic trials, I was like, "I don't know how many I'm gonna take." Like, I was nervous. I was outweighing, okay, the chance of you running out of fuel or you having a bathroom issue in this race. That was the big
Mm,
fear. So yeah,
yeah.
I would say if I felt like no problem, I would definitely try to take on more gel. Um,
Yeah.
but again, my theory is also, is the blood pressure dropping, is that leading to the GI, like the stress and the kind of emptying, and it's not necessarily anything else, but that's what I
Mm.
have not been able to figure out. And then also we can't figure out a good liquid carbohydrate electrolyte solution that doesn't make me also go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that was me my next question is if you had tried
Yeah,
various,
so
yeah,
many.
liquids and so many. Ugh, it's so
Yeah,
frustrating. From a dietitian, just like from my perspective, it's all about just like you just keep trying different things
I
and trying and
know.
trying and trying, and it's just with your history of GI stuff, and you're obviously the only, you have these kind of high stakes events, and you're just practicing and practicing. It just must be so infuriating not being able to dial that in completely. But hopefully you can kind of get some help and get some answers. Obviously, you're pregnant now, but I know you want to kind of get back to it after. But I want to circle back for a second to working with Lottie. So it sounds like, at least this is just what I'm assuming. It sounds like you were just eating more. Would you say that you were able to kind of get more nutrition in, more calories in as well, just because of you were talking about including energy dense foods and you weren't eliminating as many things? Is that correct, would you say?
Yeah, so what we tried to do, what was nice when she was making food for me, it's almost like we tried to not tell me what ingredients were
Mm,
in it. So then hopefully my brain was not like, oh, maybe you are allergic to that kind of feeling. And then I would
yeah.
actually like and it was really funny. What she did one time is, because we wanted her to see, she snuck in soy sauce like on purpose because that obviously has
Mhm.
gluten in one of my meals, and I remember like writing down in my log like how bad I felt that night, and she was like,
Oh,
"Okay," she goes, "That's good to hear because that means like I didn't know and my body still reacted to the gluten." So that was
oh,
sort of us telling like that was a good sign. That was me being like, "Okay, it's not my brain thinking I'm
yeah.
allergic to this," like my body actually reacted to that. So, yeah, I think what was helpful is it probably ended up being calorically more, but in a way, it's the type. Like, for example, because when I was out here like training by myself and I was always concerned with make sure you're eating enough, my go-tos, if I'd like finish lunch, would be like, oh, I will have like my potato chips, or I would have, like extra peanut butter and extra nuts, or I'll have like 2 brownies. So I sort of compensated for my calories just through probably junk food is the best way to put it,
Mhm,
because I knew like, oh, I could afford it and I needed the calories, and I had positive feedback because I never lost my menstrual cycle. Everything was like always working on that end very well, and I wasn't
mhm,
losing weight. So I'm like, okay, I know that I am like fueling my body in that regard. But I think what Lottie helped me be like, hey, I have a really big like sweet tooth. Could we make your dessert actually more calories, but with healthier ingredients? So I'm still
mm,
getting the dessert, but then we're actually like giving me more nutrient dense foods. So yeah, I'm sure it ended up being like a little more calories. I didn't necessarily gain weight because I was still running,
mhm,
100
mhm.
plus mile weeks. But it just helped me get out of the like just reach for whatever snacky foods I
Sure.
have because I need to make sure like my weight stays on and I'm fueling, to like, okay, it's okay to like add in more greens to your meals and have, an extra salad with dinner versus thinking, oh, I'll need more French fries in the dinner versus that.
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, no, that all makes sense. It sounds like you really improved the quality of what you were eating, not just the quantity.
Yes.
Um, and how did you come about to realize that eggs and soy were an issue?
Soy was pretty easy. When I took out dairy, I was trying to find like a substitute, and I was drinking soy milk for a bit, and then I just started to have the same symptoms as like when I
Mm,
had gluten, the brain fog, the digestion issues, and I was like, okay, I think this is a culprit. And then eggs was a really sad. Um, I just remember one day I was like at brunch and I got an egg dish and I was like, "I have a massive headache," but of course, that could happen any day. And then, like,
mm.
a few more times that week when I had eggs, I was like, "I still have that headache." And I'm like, "Oh, no." So then I, like, took it out, and then I brought it back in pretty quickly, and the same thing happened. Just right away, I got that feeling. So that was a really sad one for me, and I'm hoping that if we can figure out or heal my gut in a way, that the things that weren't necessarily, like, on paper, yes, gluten I'm allergic to, dairy I'm allergic to. Perhaps I can bring those back in, somehow introduce them back into my life, into my gut. That's my dream goal.
Yeah, yeah. No, okay. Got it. Yeah, I mean, that would be really nice to bring those foods back in, especially because you
Yes.
enjoy them so much. Um, so let's get into all the race nutrition details, and then we'll circle back to everyday eating. What is your go-to pre-race dinner right now?
Ooh, okay. I am really big on whatever I'm eating in my normal daily life, whether that's workouts, easy runs, keep the same for races. And so it gets a little tricky when I'm traveling. We definitely like to do a little research before we're at different races. And if we
Hmm.
can find either like chains that I know I'm like safe with or restaurants where we call ahead and say, have you heard of food allergies? And we like get the tone of their voice and whether they do. Um, I guess I could give you an example, like when I've gone to New York or Boston, one of the places I love there is called Dig, and it's
Oh,
like
yes, I love
yeah,
them.
it's order at the counter, and so what they have is they have little salmon, portions, so I'll get salmon, and then they'll have big chunky sweet potatoes, so I get like 2 to 3 sides of sweet potatoes, and then they have a nice brown rice that has like a thyme, salt, pepper, some other seasonings in it. Yeah, and so I keep it pretty simple, like not a ton of like fruits or veggies, but try to do a good mix of fat, protein, and carbohydrate.
Hmm.
And then I'm usually drinking kind of one of my solutions is Scratch Labs,
Hmm.
with strawberry lemonade, and that's I have like 2 to 3 bottles throughout the day of that. And then I usually have the, like, dessert that I have most nights is a black bean brownie. I have a chef out here in Flagstaff who, makes me snacks, like, once every 2 weeks, and part of that is those black bean brownies with peanut butter and cocoa, and, yeah, so those are my desserts at night, and, yeah, I would say that's kind of something typical. If I was able to, like, eat at someone's house, it would be the same. I would say I would eat either, like, chicken, salmon, any sort of white or brown rice, baked sweet potato fries, regular potato, and then
Hmm.
maybe some broccoli or a salad.
Got it. So that's kind of more your everyday eating style, it sounds
Yes.
like.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump to that for a minute then. Um, what kinds of foods do you love? And maybe it's breakfast foods or things for lunches or snacks other than what you've listed. Um, Anything else you kind of like to describe and what a typical eating day might look like when you're training?
Sure. Okay. So, when I'm not pregnant, I love coffee. I absolutely despise it now, which is so funny, but
Oh,
makes
really? That's so
yeah,
interesting.
I think it's Mother Nature's just way of being like, "Hey, don't have too much caffeine," but I cannot stand the smell of it. It is like
Oh, wow.
I'm a sad version of myself. Yeah, so no coffee. So now I just get up and I have a glass of water, which is sad. But,
That's
normally
sad.
I would say I'm the first up in our house to brew coffee, and then I will typically have since we're working out, usually anywhere from, like, 1 to 2 hours within waking up, I'll typically just have a picky bar, and a little electrolyte drink, and then coffee, and then if I have a little more time, but until my run, I might have, I make baked sweet potatoes, cut them in half, and then I'll put peanut butter, almond butter, and then a little
Hmm.
cinnamon and cacao nibs on top.
Yum.
Again, I need just a little more time to digest that one. So that would be another breakfast option. and then go drop the kids off at school, go do my run or workout, and then pretty much every day within 30 minutes of finishing, I will have a protein smoothie. And for me, that is typically rice protein powder, almond milk, frozen bananas, and then my favorite kind of smoothie right now is a mint chocolate chip. So it's fresh mint, kale, cacao nibs, and then either peanut butter or almond butter. And I blend that up and then sprinkle a couple of cacao nibs on top. So
Ooh,
that
that
I
sounds
usually
delicious.
very good. I usually have that every day. And the only way I would switch it up is if I don't do the mint, maybe
Yeah.
I put like strawberries and it's a strawberry banana smoothie, protein smoothie.
Hmm.
Yep, and then I will come home and lunch is typically leftovers from the night before, or if I'm feeling like a brunch meal, I will make 3 to 4 corn tortillas, bacon, black beans, some hash brown potatoes, a little tomato, avocado, and then I'll probably have orange juice with that. And then I usually take a nap most days. Then when I get up from my nap, I will have some other snack, and that snack might be like um, the chef that I have also makes some protein balls, and that's just kind of rolled up protein powder, almond or peanut butter, date, chocolate chips, or cacao nibs. So I'll have 1 to 3 of those, and then I will probably go for my second run, like an hour to hour and a half later. And then after second run, we're probably getting close to dinner. I might try to have a light snack after that. Otherwise, if dinner is within a good time frame, I can just have my carbohydrate solution, which has a couple hundred calories post run. And then, yeah, dinners for us are anywhere between, I would say my husband Ben will grill salmon, but that's only for myself and the kids because that's the only thing he's allergic to is
Oh
salmon.
gosh.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do salmon for me, and then let's say like chicken with like fennel for him,
Hmm.
or maybe
Hmm.
like a honey mustard sauce, and then baked sweet potatoes. I always make a really big salad, and salad is like my easy way to get a bunch of things in there. We'll try
Hmm.
to throw radishes, cucumbers, tomatoes, pepitas, maybe raisins, avocado. What else do we put in there? It's just kind of the way to like throw
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
sort of veggies you have in there, and then I'll either do olive oil and lemon or olive oil and a balsamic drizzle.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then we usually have white or brown rice with every meal. So if we're having the salmon, sweet potatoes, and salad, we'll also have another carb, brown or white rice. We make a lot of Mexican dishes, so that would be beef tacos, and
Hmm.
that's like ground beef with bell peppers, onions. We do a nice taco sauce, taco seasoning over corn tortillas, and then maybe we make a cilantro lime white rice, another salad, and then we can kind of make that version into like burgers. So we'll take the ground beef, he'll make burgers, but since I can't have bun, he'll cut up sweet potatoes, and the sweet potato rounds become my
Hmm.
bun.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
grill onions and mushrooms and avocado, top that, and then either some gluten-free pasta on the side, and then salad. So those are kind of our like traditional, I think, meals that we rotate throughout the week. And then typically after dinner, I will have dessert, whether that's that black bean brownie, if I've made like my own homemade granola, but that's sort of getting less and less with the ingredients that I can't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm like in really heavy training, I might have another protein smoothie at night. So that's either the same kind or just like banana, peanut butter, protein powder, and almond milk. I usually try to have something like that in the evening so I get an extra source of protein before I go to sleep.
Awesome. That all sounds amazing. So, does everyone in your family pretty much like do they eat gluten then, or because they're kind of
Yes.
you guys are all eating the same thing? Okay, so they're having
Yeah,
their own thing.
everyone Ben just does it well. He does it where I don't have gluten or dairy, but everyone else can have it, and it's really easy. Like, we make a
Right.
chili, and the boys will make their pasta, I'll make my pasta, and then
Hmm.
they'll put cheese on theirs, and
Sure.
I won't have anything.
Got it. Do you
Yeah.
find yourself having many like gluten-free products? I know you mentioned gluten-free pasta, but you didn't mention like a gluten-free bun or gluten-free bread or other types of things. Are you reaching for any of those kind of, now that they are on the market and it's so mainstream to be, gluten-free? Are you reaching for many of those products?
I don't, and that's typically because a lot of them, well, one, there we figured out I'm allergic, or at least I react to something called xanthan gum,
Oh, yeah.
and that's in a lot of those products.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I really am pretty limited in that regard. Like even just like a gluten-free pancake mix, waffle mix, that all has xanthan gum. So
Mhm.
I unfortunately have not been able to find a lot of substitutes, and maybe that's good. It honestly forces me to eat like pretty wholesome. I don't have a lot
Mhm.
of processed foods. Would I love to like just have I would love to have like crackers or just extra things on hand. But I'm pretty limited with the allergies that I have. So I don't have many like of those, I guess, products or processed, probably only like my company energy bar, picky bars.
Yeah, yeah.
I have those, but for the most part, yeah, it's pretty like natural food sources or something that we can either make from home.
Yeah. I've been meaning to try Picky Bars for ages, and I finally did a couple weeks ago. They're like, all your stuff is great, by the way. I mean, I already knew that from like client feedback and hearing from others, but I really love it. I got like basically one of each product.
Oh,
I've just
nice.
been making
Thank
my
you.
way. My husband pretty much ate, well, I tried a little bit, but the granola, the chocolate chip granola, I barely got
Yep.
that one. He like basically demolished that one.
Yeah, of
It was
course.
gone.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so I will be placing another order very soon. That was all very delicious. What is your favorite product from your whole line?
Ugh, I mean, most likely the bars, although the picky drizzle, this was when I like was okay to eat coconut because it does have
Mhm.
coconut sugar, and that's sort of on the fence of whether I can have coconut right now. But that people tend to say like once you open a jar of that, it is very hard to put the lid back on. So that's very delicious. But I mean, the bars are just like our original, and I
Yeah.
kind of switch between like what flavors I like depending on one, if I'm pregnant or not, or just like how much I've been eating of the same flavor. But my kind of favorite flavors are off fudge nuts, our mint condition, and then our cinnamon roll-in. Those are kind of my three flavors I go
Yeah.
between. Yeah.
I love the cinnamon one. That was really good. The fudge nuts is really good. I actually don't think I got the mint one, but I'll have to next time because I know my husband liked that one.
Nice.
I didn't get the drizzle. I didn't see that on the site. I must have
Oh,
missed it. I
yikes.
heard about it. I need to get that next time.
Yep.
I've heard it's very good.
Yeah.
Awesome. And have you played any part in kind of, I know Lauren was kind of the main recipe creator, but did you ever play a part in any of that, or kind of what was your main role in Picky Bars? Just since we're
I mean,
talking
I
about
like
it.
to look back and say, like, I kind of forced the hand of us to start the company.
Yeah.
Lauren had like the idea, she had the recipe. I kind of helped her like, formulate different ingredients. And then Jesse had the MBA, he had the business plan. And I feel like if you were to ask them, I was just like, we should do this. Because I was just a big dreamer and believer. And
Yeah.
somehow kind of forced the issue and like really got us going. Yeah, so I think the three of us just complemented each other really well in what our strengths and weaknesses were. And yeah, it allowed for us to launch it and then feel like, okay, like this is actually something that we could really make into a full-fledged company. And it worked.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys, how long ago did you sell it to
Well, we
Laird?
sold it in 2021.
Oh, so exciting. Are you still involved in the company, or has the other company now completely taken it over?
Yeah, no, we still are. I'm considered sort of like an ambassador, so it's still like
Okay.
spreading the picky love and the picky word. And
Yeah.
we have picky bars at a lot of our events that we do, and still just trying to encourage people who have never tried us or heard about us too. And it'll always be like that, even when we're not at the point where Laird has really taken over, and whether picky the brand is no longer. I mean, I'm still gonna like always want to support it, and the fact that Laird saw a vision in us and wanted to acquire us, we're going to always be behind them in that regard, even though it's something that, yeah, we sold it, but we built it for a decade. So we'll always be emotionally invested in that regard.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mhm.
You mentioned doing a rice protein. Which one do you do in your smoothies?
It's Nutribiotic.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one. Okay,
Yeah, it's very
Nutribiotic.
simple. It doesn't have a lot of ingredients.
Okay. And you
Yeah.
also mentioned a carb solution and an electrolyte drink in your everyday eating. Which ones are you using there?
So I mean, it's not a lot of carbs, but the more electrolyte, that's the Scratch Lab.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just the regular Scratch ones.
Yeah.
So I've been using their products too recently. I love just trying tons and tons of things all the time,
Yeah.
and just so I can, just share what's out there with my clients,
Right.
and also just for myself. But I've tried recently that was the Scratch Clear that I really like too, because I don't
Ooh.
like a lot of taste. Have you tried that
Okay.
one? It's not very
I
high in
haven't.
sodium.
I
Yeah,
haven't.
it's not
I
so
do.
it may not be
Okay.
great for you because it's not as high carb, but just for like it just tastes like almost nothing. It's like a hint of lemon or a hint of orange. I really like that one. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
and their
I
gummies are
love the
so good.
taste.
Yeah.
Like, I love kind of like sugary taste of drinks, so
Okay.
I find that. So I love the strawberry lemonade, but it'd still be
Got it.
good to explore.
So you probably are a better fit for the more like sugary ones, and you probably need the carbs anyways.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, but
Yeah.
they have some really good products out there. I'm really enjoying the Scratch line. Okay, so let's get back to the race nutrition details. I know you're still kind of figuring this all out, but so you did your pre-race dinner. What about your pre-race breakfast? What are you typically doing? Like what did before the New York City Marathon? I think that was your last like really big race. What were you going for?
Yeah, it's pretty similar, as far as, like, normal breakfast. It would
Okay.
be, let's see, since it was more timing, we had to get up and get on the bus, so 4 plus hours. I'm having a bowl of white rice with a little peanut butter and salt, and then coffee, and then probably, like, an hour to an hour and a half before is when I'll have a picky bar, and then I'm
Hmm.
sipping on my electrolyte solution, and then I had actually half of a I have a half? Oh, I might have had a full gel. I believe I had a full gel right before the start, like when I'm a few minutes from the starting line.
Which gels are you using?
Martan,
Hmm. Are you
yeah,
doing without the caffeine or with caffeine?
without the caffeine.
Are you typically steering clear of caffeine because of all the GI stuff?
I don't really know. It's like the benefit of it. I'm not sure. I
Mm.
know like the brain benefit, like later in the race. That's the only time I would possibly take it. It's more to tell my brain, hey, quit being tired. But I definitely have to, yeah, weigh the risk of, is this going to give me a possible GI issue right before this race is
Yeah.
over?
What are you doing for salt during your race?
Um, that is where we are trying to figure
Okay.
out. That's the holes in because the Martan gel, I believe, only has 25
Yeah, it's very
milligrams.
low.
Yeah, exactly. So therein, I think lies one of the issues. So that is what
Mm.
I'm trying to figure out.
What have you tried? So you've tried like I think I read in their book it was like salt pills you've tried
We
and you've
did
tried.
that, and then I
Yeah.
had a digestion issue with that.
Oh, okay.
And when I say digestion issue, obviously I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I've tried Gatorade in some marathons. I tried Scratch actually in the
Mm,
marathon, did not work. Uh,
mm,
yeah, so still working on it.
yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully you can get that sorted and work with, some combination of since it's like blood pressure, I would say it's like maybe it's like medical slash sports dietitian,
Sure,
right? But
totally.
what's your go-to recovery meal?
Ooh, typically at a race, I will try to find a good burger and fries and a Coke. And of course, that's a burger gluten free. Usually, they'll do like a
Yep.
lettuce wrap. And I like to have bacon and avocado on that. And then if there's somewhere that has sweet potato fries, that's my preference. But otherwise, regular fries are great. We have a really good place here called Diablo Burger that they have like a ranch, within 80 miles of Diablo Burger here, and so all of their ingredients are locally sourced, and so you can add a bunch of different toppings. So that would be yeah, my pretty much go to anywhere I can find a burger and fries and soda.
Got it. And when you're training, so you're doing your long runs or any kind of key workouts or anything, is this pretty much all the same here that you're kind of training with this stuff and testing things
Yes.
out? Yeah,
Yep.
awesome. Um, okay. So I want to move on to that very well circulated photo. I think it was in 2016 that you posted of your postpartum belly, which I know resonated with so many moms and really opened up the conversation for a lot of things relating to body image. So first, just obviously want to say thank you for being such a positive force of change in this space and so openly sharing your experience. Whenever I'm reading things you write, you often write that something might be TMI, but really nothing ends up being TMI. And I know as a dietitian who spends a lot of time in what may be typically called the TMI space, like whether it's poop or whatever else,
Yeah.
just know that I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, I guess you kind of shared a little bit before about your own journey with body image, both as a professional athlete and mom. But I just wanted to know if you wanted to say anything else about that, and especially in relation to really sharing like your postpartum journey.
Yeah, I think when I shared that at the time, I obviously did not have any ulterior motives. And I think it's even more important now with social media and how much it's become such a forefront in our life. I go back and forth between sharing and not sharing because I think some people could have a perception of why I share. Like,
Mm,
at the end of the day, it's like if there's like one person that either identifies with something that I say or like takes my message and is like right on and it like improves their life in some way, like that's the whole reason, right?
hmm
And I've kind of found that like as I shared my journey and then I was out in like real life when I would have people come up to me and I'm like, oh, like there are real people like behind the computer screens. So, like what I'm saying is actually having an impact or making a difference for them. And it's funny because I don't necessarily think I'm any different or extraordinary or inspirational than the next person, but I think I'm just really authentic and transparent about what I'm going through. And I think my message, especially through that postpartum and then now that I'm pregnant again, is like, I'm going to share my stuff, not to be like, this is what I do, this is the right way, or like, don't compare what I'm doing to what you're doing, but find nuggets of maybe what I'm doing and see how they can apply to your life. Like just
hmm
because I could run 17 minutes for the 5K at pregnant doesn't mean if you ran 27 minutes when you were 16 weeks pregnant that that's not great because that's great for you. So I think it's really important in my messaging that people aren't finding like, oh, how does she do that? I'm like, well, I get paid to run, I get paid to sleep, I get paid to eat, I get paid to recover. Like this is my full-time job. And so I like sharing kind of what I'm doing on a daily basis, not so people are like, oh, I feel bad about what I'm doing, but they realize like, no, your goals matter, your dreams, like your path matters. It's different than mine, but we might share something common along the way. And that's kind of my incentive to just like remain an open book.
Yeah, and I know we all appreciate that. I read on your blog that you don't count calories, but you do weigh yourself regularly, and that has been important for your career and body. So I'd love to hear how you use the scale as a tool in a positive way as an athlete, especially since the scale can be really difficult for a lot of people.
Sure. Again, I don't know if this is like upbringing, like not talking about weight or what we're eating or weight
hmm
correlating with performance growing up, but I just never
hmm
had that messaging. And again, I don't know if 3 other brothers or then my high school coach and my college coach, it was always just so positive that to me now as I've trained like full time for 10, 12, 15 plus years and I'm like naturally very lean and I even after having like babies I almost became like leaner or that I just burn energy and burn like calories more efficiently. For me the scale has been used to make sure like come back from a run and I know what my weight is, like have I refueled as far as like liquid because that's obviously where
hmm
weight is, so the liquid weight, and then basically towards the end of the day when you weigh yourself, is that a few pounds more than I was in the morning? Because that means, okay, like your body was absorbing what you gave it. Hopefully you're fueled as far as like the actual fluid intake. And then calories wise, you can't see that in the scale. It's more just the fluid balance.
hmm
But then the next day, if my weight was like less than the day before, that tells me, okay, like you missed something here a little bit. And so you're a little off. But it's sort of like I almost wouldn't need to weigh myself at this point because of how I feel, I can tell. So for some
mm
reason, having like a really good streak of training, and then I have a week that's like, ooh, I'm feeling kind of like I'm just not feeling as strong during workouts, I could be like, oh, I might be like a pound or two lighter. So it's actually very easy now for me to tell. And that is a positive way for me to be like, hey, check in. Are you making sure like everything, or are you just running a lot right now? Because there are some days where I will definitely have a deficit. And that's because, oh gosh, I ran 16 miles in the morning and then I had a 5 mile afternoon run. And there are only so many hours in the day to like cram the food in because I'm running all the time. So
Hmm.
to me, that might be like, hey, the next day you're just going to run once. And that's a really good day to catch up on fueling. And that's sort of intentional with how we do our training to make sure we're not ever like going in the hole too much.
Yeah. I love all that. And it's again, it's very refreshing to hear this kind of language and speak around the scale, which often is something that's triggering for people and it makes them upset, or maybe they associate happy feelings so they lost weight. It's just like such this thing that can be very difficult. So it sounds like it's really for you. It's really just a way for you to make sure that you're getting enough in, that you're taking care of your hydration needs, and you're really kind of staying on top of it. But as you said, it's like you almost don't need it at this point. It's just confirming what you already know because you're such a experienced athlete at this stage. But yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of
Let's
course.
circle back to pregnancy. I'm curious how this pregnancy thus far has compared to your previous ones. I know you mentioned the coffee aversion, but just curious if in previous pregnancies, you had any challenges with food and if anything else is kind of coming up for you so far.
You know, I mean, mostly it was like the first trimester, I was very sick in all 3 pregnancies, so,
Mm.
nothing sounded good, and that was more just sad emotionally. So I'm like, food does not sound good, and for someone who, like, really does love food and eats a ton of it when I am training, I was like, how sad that, like, it was kind of like, "Well, I guess you just have to eat food today to, like, live," but nothing was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." So that was like the saddest part of, like, the first trimesters I remember of my
Mhm.
pregnancies. And then now the challenge is, like, I'm finding that even though I'm not, like, that far along, my stomach, however, like, my uterus is sitting, my intestines are sort of pushed up, and I'm
Mm.
getting fuller quicker, which typically, like, I remember that didn't happen until I was like 35, 36 weeks when you're a lot bigger. But my OBGYN just says, this baby could just be like changing the shape of like where your intestines are. And so she's like, you kind of almost just have to like not go back for seconds right away. It's like I have to space out my eating a little more, which is different for me because I'm typically used to putting back quite a bit at one sitting.
Mhm.
Um, but now I have to be like, I'm having indigestion or I'm like burping. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm only only 17 weeks pregnant. How's this happening? So that has been a little challenging for me for sure. It's more like I really love to live my life where food is sort of an afterthought, meaning
Mm.
it just comes naturally and I don't have to think about it. Like I plan because of my allergies. And I think
Mhm.
that's probably a reason why I haven't really had any like body issues or relationship because I have to think so much about like allergies and planning ahead. Like if I'm going to a potluck, I'm like, well, I don't want to count on people having like my allergies checked off. So I'll just make my own things and bring them. And just in case there's nothing there for me, I know I have food. So I already do enough of that planning. So the actual like sitting down to eat and the timing of my meals, I'm like, I just want those to be seamless and natural so I don't have to think about it. And for the most part, it is. And it's easy living with, like my husband, he's the most, I don't know what we would call it, moderate. Um, he's like, I don't like to use the word perfect, but he has never had one issue with food. He literally eats when he's hungry. He stops eating when he's hungry. He will have dessert when he wants. He doesn't indulge on anything. He'll have pizza, he'll have soda. He eats salads. Like he's just so like, yeah, it's just food.
Yeah,
And so I feel fortunate like being married to him that it's like, yeah, and that's how our boys are and they
that's
move
such a
so
great
much.
role model.
Yeah, no, it's really great. So it for me more it's like I am just wary of that I am sort of a figure that I don't want people to ever to aspire to what I look like. And so when
Mhm.
I'm sharing my nutrition journey, I am wary to say like, this is what I do, but you have to do what works for you. Your caloric demands are different for you. Everyone has different body types. Like someone can run the same time in the marathon weighing 115 pounds versus 130 pounds, like at the pro level. So it's sort
Mhm,
of,
mhm.
it's dangerous to go down that comparison. So I always have to, when I talk about body image, I never want it to be like aspire to look a certain way. You should aspire to feel a certain way. And I
Yep.
think that's an important message that I have tried to instill. And I'm still going to, I still will get flack because a lot of people will view me as very thin and wonder like, do I eat enough? And I'm very confident and secure in my own body now that I know what I do on a daily basis. I would invite anyone to my home to come and eat with me. But I've also stayed healthy for 12 plus years and had two beautiful, big boy, healthy boys. So in my head, I know that I'm doing my profession like really well and feeling well. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a career for the last 12, 15 plus years.
Yeah, and I mean that's what this show's all about. It's showing how people eat so differently and how it's all about you, and that's my goal here in these profiles is like let's showcase how everyone does things differently and their very unique paths to getting there. And that's why I think it's so interesting because people have such different unique stories, much like their life story, but it's their nutrition story. And look how they are successful doing this, and then another person completely different doing something opposite, and they're successful doing that.
Yeah.
And it's really all about finding your own path and figuring out what works for you, which is really what like sports nutrition is all about, right? That's really it's interesting that you say you get flack from people about your body, and I'm sorry that you are dealing with that. Is that something that's an ongoing thing, or can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would say it happens less now,
Mm,
but I definitely like just over the years, whether it's something that would come out, but let's say there's a picture of me in any sort of,
mm,
if you're in the right stance, you can look
yeah.
really strong and powerful. If you're on a down step, I can be like, oh wow, doesn't look as powerful and it looks more like lean and skinny. And I don't have like a very muscular frame. I do have more just like a lean, like
Mm-hmm.
low body fat kind of frame versus my counterpart teammate Kellen. She has more muscular. We probably weigh the same, but our outward appearance is amazingly different. And so I think
Mm,
that's interesting to see like all the different body shapes. But yeah, there were like a couple things just on like images that came out that it would be like, get her a burger, what have you.
uh,
And it's like, I don't
yeah.
need to fire back and say, hey, I have burgers because again, like that's a
Yeah,
critic and that probably means they have like some issue with themselves. And so
sure.
you got to have, patience and empathy for people. And yeah, I've just said like over time, everyone's just always been like a little concerned, or it's easy to maybe comment on someone on the skinny end, like when you're
Mm,
with them, like family or friends, to be like, oh, well, she doesn't have to worry about it, And I'm like, yeah, but I I don't, but it's also like my job. And so my goal
mm-hmm.
isn't to like look or weigh a certain way. It's like, how can I feel really good and do my training and do my racing? And,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Again, like food is one of the most complicated relationships that humans have, and it's very natural to struggle with it. And so I don't want anyone to ever think just because it comes a little easier to me that it's not a hard struggle for most people out there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I forget where I saw this. It may have been another caption of on Instagram or something, but it was something to the effect of, really focusing on how you feel versus how you look in the mirror or in a picture or something like that. And again, it was just one of those things that resonated because that's a lot of what I'm talking about with people. And certainly, whether it's a number on the scale or whatever, it's more about, okay, well, how does that food or how does, this race nutrition plan, whatever, how does it make you feel? It's always so important to really listen to your body and how you feel. Numbers are important, of course. We're not going to disregard those things, but focusing on feeling is really important too. Um, I want to turn to, and we're almost done because I know we're both coming up on time here. But you were diagnosed, I guess, slightly over a year ago with the bicuspid aortic valve disease, or BAVD. How do you even say that? BAVD? How do you pronounce that?
I know. I think you just say BAVD, honestly.
BAVD, let's just say
Yeah.
that. I was like, dude, you pronounced it. But it's a congenital heart condition. And, I know you had a lot of testing done. It was deemed safe for you to continue training and racing at a high level. I was just wondering if this diagnosis has had any further impact on your diet or other lifestyle things.
Not that I know of. I mean,
Hmm.
as far as when I met with my sports cardiologist, I see them once a year and they do testing. And so far, the last 2 years, they've given me the green light and they love what everything looks like. And they never said anything about my diet just because they were like, besides this defect, like based on pictures, or like your heart is beautiful, like
Mhm.
having pictures taken of it. So no, it's not necessarily like a diet related or cholesterol, anything like that. So there were no concerns, but it more just confirmed like, hey, you just never know. Life is short. Do your best to control what you can, eat as well as you can, exercise, stay active. You still never know what's going to happen to you, but at least you can say like, okay, well, I tried my best. And if something happens to me health wise, so be it. But you
Mhm.
definitely did your part in advocating for yourself.
Yeah. Do you plan to do any other races during your pregnancy that you're able to share, at least with me?
I don't know. Honestly, I've been trying to figure out like, hey, is there something convenient, or are we going somewhere? Because I don't necessarily like want to travel like I did when
Sure.
I'm running professionally to a race and be like, hey, can I jump in this? So it would have to be more if it was like convenient, somewhere close, or like our family was going to go there and there happened to be a race. I feel like I only have a few months to do that before like I will start slowing down and getting uncomfortable, and most likely won't run towards the end. At least I didn't at my last two pregnancies. So
Mhm.
I'm just counting the days that I am still able to do things and do certain workouts. But probably the only thing goal would be, can I run our Flagstaff downtown mile? And that's July 4th. And
Got
I would
it.
be 30, probably be like 31 weeks. That would be great if I could race that mile.
Got it. Got
Yep.
it. So once you stop running, are you doing any cross training?
I probably will this time. In the past, like I kind of just went until like I was having round ligament pain, so underneath,
Mhm.
and that told me like, hey, you're having pain. Like I just carry, and my babies are big, so I really grow outwards, and I think it just put more stress underneath there. And so before I didn't do anything. I think because I was like, well, you're just preparing for your life to get really crazy. And honestly, like cardiovascularly, that's never been the issue for me to come back. It's like muscles and tendons and ligaments postpartum. But I
Mhm.
think this time, since I am older and, I don't have 10 plus years in my career left ahead, maybe 5 years. I would like to try to get back as soon as I can. And I think that cross training will sort of help me in all avenues. I think moving different muscles, like if I'm on a bike or elliptical, that might help like my tendons and ligaments stay in that pattern and just help me stay sane those last couple weeks before baby comes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I know that you retired last year and then you changed your mind, which that's great and you're absolutely able to do, right? Which is awesome. And so what are again, if you feel comfortable sharing, what are your professional dreams for yourself after this pregnancy, since I know you're no longer retired anymore?
Yeah. So big dream goal is to be on the start line of the 2024 Olympic marathon trials, and with no other expectations, just simply to be healthy, because I will only be 5 months postpartum. And so I know that is a big feat. But what's nice is I'm not putting any like tangible time goals or what shape I should be in. I just want to be healthy and on that starting line, and then we'll see what happens. And so that's kind of the first. And then coincidentally, I like to be able to get back to training but still breastfeed as long as possible. So that's like a big, like a personal but athletic goal, because I know there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
to it. It's like make sure I'm fueling and drinking and hydrating, as well as like getting back to heavy training, but also helping my body still make and produce milk. So I'd like to do that, and then yeah, we'll see how the trials goes, and I think that'll help me plan what the rest of 2024 looks like, whether I'm able to make it back to the track for those Olympic trials. Yeah, whether something is in the cards for Paris Olympic. That's all to be determined, I think, after the baby comes.
Yeah, for sure. And it's again, it's like we spoke about role modeling, whether it's your husband with how he eats, but also for you and for so many other women out there, whether you're a professional athlete or semi-professional or just a recreational athlete, but just seeing that you're really charting your own path and you're not living by any rules. You're having the babies when you want to have babies, or I guess with the second one, that was just when it happened.
Yeah.
Um, but it's great to kind of see you living both your, or going after your professional dreams and living your personal ones as well. So again, congrats on your pregnancy.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, we're going to wrap things up with quick bites questions. What is your favorite meal or snack pre-workout? I know we may have kind of covered this, but I'm going to guess picky bars, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would say picky bars. It's just so like reliable and easily digestible, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what I go to. It's like to me, before a workout or run is like not the fun part of eating. It's just like, hey, how can I get the best energy, calories, not have any GI distress, and then the fun can be like post, whether that's a fun smoothie or yeah, like a little. We go to brunch here at this place called Tourist Home a bunch.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I would say pre-workout is just coffee and picky bar.
Yep. Has been your worst race nutrition experience? Or have there
Um,
been too many?
yeah, no, the Chicago Marathon, that currently is my PR, but I also crap my pants at mile 22 and just kept going. And I finished the marathon, and that was on national TV. And yeah, it was one of those like, well, what are you gonna do? I'm like on PR. I'm running a PR, and I didn't even have time to stop and think about it. And that's what was like difficult. Sometimes it's like finding a
Mm,
place and you're in the middle of a street. So yeah, that's probably like a little bit of my runner nightmare nutrition story.
yeah, except that that's very relatable.
Right.
I think many people have been in some form of that. Okay, not on national TV, not
Yeah.
running a PR, not professional athlete necessarily, but I know my first marathon, it was in Paris, and there were no porta potties anywhere, and I literally pooped in a bus station. I pooped
Yep. There you
between
go.
two cars and in a park.
Nice. Yep. Perfect. No,
But I had
exactly.
time to pull over because I wasn't, trying to win a race. But,
Yep.
I think
That's
everyone's had some version of that story.
absolutely.
Uh, all right, biggest cooking catastrophe if you've had one, but I know Ben cooks, so maybe it's his biggest cooking catastrophe.
Oh man, he hasn't had many. I'm trying to think if I have. Oh gosh. I mean, I feel like I have. Honestly, sometimes my catastrophe is my brain trying to do too many things. So I'm like cooking something and then I know that I need to get back to it, but I'm like, I just have a few minutes, I can sneak something else in the house,
Mhm.
and then it is burned. That has
Yep,
happened on more occasions than I'd like to admit. So just
been there.
burning food,
Yep.
yeah.
My thing is also sometimes like I'd be like, "Oh, this is like heating up for like 3 minutes. I can take a really quick shower." No,
Yep.
I can't.
Yep.
What's the most exotic food that you've ever tried?
Oh. Oh gosh. Now I'm blanking, but we went to South Africa for our honeymoon,
Mm.
and today I wanna say it was, and again, people have had this here, it might have been like venison, which is deer.
Mm.
Yeah, probably something like that on like it was like kebabs, something like that. I would
Mhm,
say
mhm.
that's probably my, yeah, most like out of the box kind of thing.
They have some really delicious, like, gamey kinda meats over there.
Oh yeah, they
Good
do.
stuff.
They
Really
know
good stuff.
they know their
Yeah.
meats for sure.
Yes, yes. What is your favorite beverage?
Ooh, probably something like a strawberry lemonade or freshly squeezed orange juice.
Mm,
Yes.
yum.
Mhm. That I never
What it
make, that I just
Mhm.
paid too much money for.
Yes, definitely. It always makes it taste better, doesn't it?
It does. Yep.
What are your comfort foods?
Ooh, popcorn was one of them. We would make our own popcorn, or like we make it over the stove, with like, avocado oil and kernels and then salt and pepper. I really love that. I've kind of like cut down on my corn intake. Sometimes I feel like that flares my gut up a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it goes back to like my post race. It's probably like a burger, fries, and a soda that just I don't know if that's like memories of growing up, but one with my allergies now, it's really easy like to know a couple places that I can get like a couple of chains like In and Out. I can
Mm-hmm,
get
mm-hmm.
that on the road because I know they don't have anything else gluten. Yeah, so I would say burger, fries, and a soda.
What, I know you're not doing dairy right now, but maybe it's a non-dairy version. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, I mean, I can give you ice cream. I can't have any of it now, but chocolate chip cookie dough.
Yum. Wait, can you do, well, they have, yeah, because you can't do like soy-based. Can you do any of the
No.
cashew ones? The
Um,
cashew-based ones? Or because they probably have xanthan gum,
yeah, they probably have
actually.
xanthan
They
gum.
all
I've
have xanthan gum because it's like a
no, and
stabilizer.
when
Oh,
I did the coconut, yeah, then coconut
yeah.
bothers me.
Ugh.
I
Oh,
know
that's so
ice
sad.
cream. It is sad.
Okay. So we're gonna say what's your favorite dessert that you can eat then.
Yeah, it would probably be something chocolatey like the chocolate brownie or black bean
Okay.
brownie, or like sometimes she will make like a apple or berry crumble, which is like either like baked apples or frozen blueberries and strawberries, and then you bake like a what does she put on it? Almond flour, nuts, dates, and like almond butter and maple syrup, and you bake that on top.
Yum. That sounds
Yep.
delicious.
hmm
And last but not least, top 3 items of gear that are most essential to your active lifestyle.
Ooh, a watch, of course. Sunglasses. We wear Rudy Project sunglasses. I feel like my eyes would just be like melted without them at this point in my career because I wear them all the time. And then a good, oh gosh. I mean,
Hoka
obviously,
shoes?
yeah, I was Hoka shoes. I was gonna be like, oh, a sports bra or some shorts, but most likely my Hoka either Cliftons or our racing flat the Rock Deck too.
Nice. What kind of watch do you wear?
I wear a Garmin.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Steph, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you spending so much of it with me and for sharing your nutrition journey. Where can everyone find you if they want to give you a follow, if they're not doing so already?
Sure. So my website, stephbruce.com, that's pretty easy. I have a blog on there. I've got kind of my social media handles, information about our adult running camp, Bruce Camp, and then my women's retreats, Grit and Growth. And then on social, I'm actually confusing people, but on my maiden name, I'm Steph Rothstein on Instagram and then Steph Rothstein on Twitter.
You can change your username, can't you? Is Steph Bruce taken?
They're out. Yes, they're all taken.
Oh,
They're all
darn.
taken. Yep.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yep.
Well, wishing you the best of luck with your pregnancy and can't wait to see how everything unfolds for you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
And that wraps up our show for today. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Stephanie Bruce, and if you did, please be sure to subscribe to the Eat for Endurance podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. Please also share it with friends and family and rate and review it wherever you listen. I would love to keep this free content coming out to you all, but that does mean I have to grow my show. Thank you for your support and see you guys next time.